Hello students. Today we will be discussing on research methodology in marketing. My name is Rishi Chakravarti. I am Assistant Professor in the Department of Commerce and Management at Assam Downtown University. By the end of this session, you will be able to define research, understand what research is all about, objectives of research, the different types of research that we generally use, the research process, which is a systematic way of conducting the research, and lastly, research methods versus methodology. Now, what is research? Why do we do research? Research is a common term that we keep on using in our day-to-day lives. So, put it simple ways, research arises with a problem or a question. Whenever there is a problem, there has to have some research. Whenever there is a question, we do research to find some answers to those questions. It can also be an investigation. So therefore, its purpose is to find answers that are justified in accordance with the questions through the application of some scientific and systematic procedures or methods. Here the terms justified, scientific, systematic must be taken into consideration, because whatever results we will be obtaining as researchers must be justified enough to the questions or the problems under investigation. It is also termed as a careful investigation or inquiry that is carried out in any branch of knowledge. So research is not only confined to a particular branch. Research is a term that can be conducted in any branch, in any departments. A marketer may conduct research to understand the buying habits of people. A brand manager may conduct research to understand the position of the brand in the market or to determine the brand value. Similarly, in every field, research is essential. It can be from academics to legal, as well as in the field of marketing and pure sciences. According to Clifford Woody, which is adapted from the book Research Methodology, Methods and Techniques by Kothari and Garg. Research comprises defining and redefining problems, formulating hypotheses or suggested solutions, organizing and evaluating data, making deductions and reaching conclusions, and at last carefully testing those conclusions to determine whether they fit the formulating hypothesis. So here, through research, we formulate hypothesis. What is hypothesis? Hypothesis is an assumption. A researcher must assume something, right? Must assume whether something have occurred because of some situations. Because without assumption, the research is not possible. So therefore, a researcher must assume or hypothesize something to conduct the research. And thereafter, it is conducted by some techniques that we will learn as we go down the slides. And lastly, we arrive at some conclusions. Now let us come to research aim, objectives and questions. What is the aim of research? Why it is done? To put it in a very simple form, research aim is to make the researcher understand where he is heading with his research work. It is very important for the researcher to identify his progress. So therefore, the researcher must be very clear about the way of conducting his research. And inside this research aim, there are research objectives as well as questions, which are basically 4 different types. First type, research objectives only. Here the researcher defines some objectives and tries to find solutions to those objectives. Or the researcher can frame some research questions to which the researcher can find out justified solutions or answers. Number 3 and number 4 are important because here the researcher can formulate one research question and below it there can be small objectives. So identifying and answering to those objectives will take the researcher closer to the research question. And similarly in number 4, the researcher can have one objective and there can be some questions underneath, the answers to which will take the researcher closer to those objectives. So it is up to the researcher how he formulates the research questions and objectives. Now we come to the different types of research. Though the list of the different types of research are endless, I have tried to provide a few types of research which will be effective for students and academicians. First is fundamental, basic research or pure research. Then comes applied research, followed by exploratory and descriptive research. Then comes qualitative and quantitative research. And last but not the least comes the conceptual research and empirical research. Now we discuss each of these types one by one. Fundamental research, pure research or basic research as you can call. It is undertaken for knowledge sake without any intention to apply it in practice. So just for knowledge sake, just to learn something or discover some theory, we conduct fundamental research. Example, research conducted to understand some natural phenomenon or related to pure mathematics. Example, Sir Isaac Newton discovered the theory of gravity due to some natural phenomenon. Right? Similarly, different mathematicians have developed some formulas or scientific formulas, should I say, through which we can use to solve some problems or develop some theories. These are without the intention to apply it in practice. So they have discovered these particular theories from either some natural phenomenon or some pure mathematics point of view. Also, if you want to make some general principles on human behavior by observing their behavioral patterns. Say for example, I visit a particular shop and I observe the behavior of individuals in that shop, and I visit a fast food restaurant and I observe the behavior of the people in the restaurant, and I come to know and I have gained knowledge through my observation that the behavior of people are different in different locations. So I have undertaken fundamental research to develop my own knowledge. That is the simple way we can put fundamental research. Now we come to applied research. Applied research is conducted to know the problems with best possible manner. Whenever there is an immediate problem faced by an industry and urgent attention is necessary, we conduct applied research. It solves practical problems related to the present market conditions. Say for example, if a marketing manager identifies that the sale records of his products are going down in this current quarter compared to the previous quarter, then there needs some urgent attention on what basis the sales have dropped. So some market research needs to be conducted, which is an applied research. Similarly, research aims to identify social, economic or any political phenomenon that may affect a particular institution. Say for example, today the world is going through a very difficult stage due to the coronavirus problem. And because of this problem, the economy of all countries are going down. If we consider India, the GDP of India is going down. So there needs some urgent attention uh, by ways where we can redevelop the economy of our country. So here some urgent attention is necessary. So therefore we conduct applied research. Now we come to exploratory research. It is a study conducted to understand an unfamiliar problem about which the researcher had little or no previous knowledge. So it's very clear. If I am a researcher and I am conducting a research about which I have no knowledge, then I need to explore something to get ideas about the problem I am investigating. And from where I will get those informations? I will get those informations from past historical data or from previous literatures available, where I can generate some ideas and develop my hypothesis on the basis of which I will be conducting my research. Similarly, if I visit a new place for the first time, I will explore the different uh, spots of that particular locality or location. And then I will make some assumptions about that place, right? Which may or may not be true. So in order to explore something, we conduct exploratory research because the researcher had little or no previous knowledge about that particular problem in hand. Now we come to descriptive research, also known as ex post facto research. This research requires an in-depth study which includes surveys and fact-finding inquiries. The major purpose of descriptive research is description of the present state of affairs as it exists. Here the researcher has no control over the variables. He can only report what is happening. Say for example, if a researcher wants to study the frequency of shopping of people in Guwahati, so he has to visit different malls and he has to interview the people, how frequently they shop, why do they shop, what items do they generally shop, and so on. And therefore, he can note down the observation or whatever information he has generated based on his research. But he cannot ask any of the shoppers, any of the people to stop shopping because he has no control over the variables. He can only report what has actually happened or is happening through some observation or interviews that he conducts. This is why we do descriptive research. Qualitative research. As the very term signifies, qualitative research is related to some quality or kind. Example, if we want to investigate about the reasons of that human display in their behavior, we conduct qualitative research. Say for example, if I am a researcher and I want to understand the attitude or opinion of an individual about some place, about some food, then I will conduct a survey and I will ask him a question like, how was the food? He will give his opinion as either good or bad. So we are understanding his opinions and therefore we are conducting qualitative research. His attitude towards advertising. If you are conducting a research on advertising and you want to find out how he behaves when he looks at some advertising, so he can reply in a positive sense or in a negative sense. So it means we are understanding his behavior towards some individual, some situation or some phenomenon. Therefore, we conduct qualitative research. Quantitative research, on the other hand, is based on quantitative measurements and can be measured in terms of quantities. Here, numerical values are applicable. As the term says, quantity. We can quantify research, right? So, unlike qualitative research, quantitative research is based on numerical things. That is quantities. Now we come to conceptual research. This type of research are based on some abstract ideas or theories and are generally used by philosophers and thinkers to develop a new concept. Empirical research. Empirical research are conducted mostly based on observation of the researcher and the experience of the researcher. So after observing a situation, the researcher does some experiments and arrives at a conclusion. Or the researcher may have experienced the situation and he does some experiments based on the experience that he has generated over the research and arrives at a conclusion. Right? It is data-based research. The data he has collected out of his research are analyzed and conclusion is reached. So these are the different types of research that we have considered for this study. Now we come to research process. There is a step-by-step way of conducting a research. First, we have to identify a problem. Without a problem, no research is possible. Therefore, we have to define a unique problem that has not been identified before. Then we try to understand the problem through some review of literatures. We go by the historical data, we read some previous literatures related to this problem, and we understand the problem and develop hypotheses, that means assumptions. Then we prepare a research design, which is a clear roadmap of how we will be conducting the research. A research design is very crucial and it is a blueprint of the research. Without a proper research design, a research cannot be effective. In the research design, the researcher has to clearly justify the sources of data, what type of data he will be collecting, whether it will be a primary or secondary data, the methods of collecting data. How will he be collecting the data? Whether he will be collecting through a questionnaire, whether he will be adopting the interview method, whether he will be adopting some survey, other different types of surveys, that should be clearly justified. Determining the sample design and sample size. So who will be the samples of the research? Where will the researcher find the sample? Or before identifying the sample, the researcher has to define the population and justify why he has selected that particular sample. Then he has to conduct the field survey and collect the data. And thereafter, he has to prepare the data through some or conduct some analysis through some statistical techniques. So those types of statistical techniques should be clearly justified. Why the researcher has adopted those types of techniques? On what basis? So then he has to prepare the research report and at last the conclusion and bibliography or references. References are very essential because it will give a proper insight about from where the researcher has adopted some data or ideas that he has generated from about the problem. So references are very important part of any research. Now we come to research methods and methodology. Research methods are methods or techniques that are used for the purpose of doing the research. Research methods are grouped into three different types. First group consists of those methods which are concerned with the collection of data. These methods will be used where the data are already available and is not sufficient to arrive at a solution. The second group consists of those statistical techniques which are used for establishing relationships between the data and the unknown. And the third group consists of those methods which are used to evaluate the accuracy obtained from such data. So the three groups identifies the different methods that a researcher has to take into consideration. Here research methods and techniques are used interchangeably. Research methods are the behavioral instruments used in selecting and constructing the research techniques. And research technique refers to the behavior and instruments we use in performing the research operation, such as making observations, recording data, technique of processing data, etc. Right? Say for example, suppose a researcher does a research and he formulates a questionnaire to be distributed among respondents to collect data from them. This is a method. And what type of questions he will be putting into the questionnaire are the different techniques of taking answers from the respondents. This is research methods and techniques, right? Though these two terms seem similar, but there is a slight difference between them. Now we come to research methodology. Research methodology is a systematic way to solve a research problem. It is a science of studying how a research is done. So in research methodology, the researcher has to identify and justify whatever tools and techniques he have adopted in the research. The research methods are a part of methodology. So research method is a small part of research methodology. And in research methodology, the researcher has to justify every step he has taken to conduct the research. How the data will be collected, what types of statistical techniques he has adopted for conducting the research, what is the solution of the research, what are his objectives and questions. Every detail of conducting the research should be highlighted in the research methodology part. Okay, students, today we have discussed about research methods and methodology. In the next class, we'll be discussing more about research methodology in marketing. Thank you so much and good day.